The ancient art of head covering or veiling is thousands upon thousands of years old and found throughout thousands upon thousands of cultures. And while I would love to give you a deep dive of each one, that will have to be a separate video. There is this fixation in Western culture that the amount of clothing worn is an extent of the woman's liberation. Essentially the idea that uncovering equates to freedom. But what is freedom if not the power of choice? Let's dive into it. Whether you are referring to secular or religious head covering, it is an ancient art nonetheless. In the 13th century, head coverings were strictly for aristocratic women. It was prohibited for a prostitute, let alone a peasant, to do so. By the Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church decreed it mandatory that all women wear a head covering. This led to the many elaborate and intricate things that we recognize, such as the princess cone or the wimple, but it also led to more simplistic, modern head coverings for the common woman. By the end of the 18th century in Louisiana, women of color were required by law to wear head coverings as a way to differentiate themselves from white women. It was at this point that only those lesser than would choose to wear, or in their case, they didn't get a choice. As a way to push back, many black women found amazing, intricate ways to make their scarves even more beautiful than whatever the white women were expected to wear, and they also added in jewelry and feathers. By the end of World War II, Eurocentric beauty was the standard, and head covering was out the window. You would only do so at home. In order to maintain the soldiers we had at war, women had to join the workforce by mass. In doing so, they needed to take off these head coverings in order to properly perform their jobs. For women of color, they also served as a reminder of their enslaved past, and for religious women who didn't choose to take off their veil, they were seen as outdated or dumb. There's also something to be said about the Jewish collective at this time. Leading up to and following World War II, the Jewish people were targets. Anything that remotely showed off your Jewishness inherently was affecting your rate of survival. So, they had to assimilate into society. Many women chose to remove their scarves altogether, while some Orthodox sectors decided to fully transition to chittels, which were also a very common form of veiling. It's just a wig. With our gained knowledge of the lineage of veiling, we are now going to turn into the idea of feminism. What is feminism, and why is there only one correct definition? To give perspective into the Arab mindset, we need to look at the actions and mindsets of two opposing feminists of their time. In May of 1923, an event which is marked as the beginning of the Arab feminist movement occurred. The event was coined Raf el-Hijab, or shedding of the hijab. The source of the event? 3 Egyptian women: Huda Sharawi, Seiza Nabawi, and Nabawiya Musa. On that fateful day in May, those 3 women stepped off of a train in Cairo and shed their facial veils. Now, the leader of this event was Sharawi, and her intent was to make a stance for women's rights against British colonialism. Unfortunately, her actions became viewed as a stance to dismantle veiling in Islam, which means, unfortunately, with a twist of irony, the first act of Arab feminism became a tribute to European colonial doctrine. Our other trailblazer was the first woman published in mainstream Arabic press, Malek Hifni Nassif. At this time, there was a rise in male authors stressing their intent to unveil women in order to liberate them. Nassif wrote a series of responses to these claims. Women continue to be oppressed by man who forbids us to have an opinion even about ourselves. If he orders us to veil, we veil. If he orders us to unveil, we unveil. Is he well-intentioned in all he asks of us and on our behalf, or does he wish us ill? There is no doubt he has erred grievously against us in decreeing our rights in the past. Sharawi and Nassif showcase that there is much more complexity in Arab feminism than Western cultures like to assume. Veiling is what allowed women in many Arab countries to be seen as individuals and citizens who can contribute to society as a whole. It allowed them to join the workforce, where they were surrounded by people who were not their family and therefore could not see their hair. It has given them the ability to compete on the same level as men. Veiling, in and of itself, serves as a symbol of female autonomy, as long as the choice is theirs and theirs alone. Modern people, men, women, and anything in between, choose to veil for a multitude of culturally significant reasons. Many want to connect with their heritage and ancestors who, by the way, did not have a choice in whether or not they got to keep this core part of their culture. And of course, for some, it does hold religious or spiritual connotation, but even in these instances, we need to look beyond stereotypes. I know we've all heard the biblical quotes that suggest a woman's head covering is connected to her promiscuity, or that it is a showcase of her husband's ownership over her. These are very outdated mindsets, of course, but there are many other spiritual reasons to veil. Many believe that the act of veiling can protect you from negative forces. Now, some may call this the Nazar or the evil eye. Others may call it a hex or just bad energy, bad mojo, bad vibes. Whatever you want to call it, it's supposed to keep out negativity. Also, can we just talk about it for a second that for some reason veiling is only associated with women? In Judaism, men are expected to wear a kippah or yarmulke at all times. In Sikhism, men and women are expected to wear a turban at all times. However, for both religions, the act of veiling isn't meant to hide the hair or cover the head. The act is actually a symbolic representation that the presence of God is always there. It also serves as a way to signify that you are part of a community. In these instances, the power comes from the devout act of wearing the scarf itself. Many modern veilers, regardless of their gender, often choose to use these mindsets in their own veiling. And that's also why it's common that somebody who veils today may not do it every single day. Everyone has their own way and their own reasons and their own mindset when it comes to this topic. When it comes down to it, veiling is a very personal process, which is why the most feminist stance to take when it comes to veiling is to allow that choice to remain with the person and that person. I would love to continue the conversation down below, and if you'd like any of my sources, they are linked in the description. Bye!